and that's too bad. But that's a phenomenon that is a human problem. It does not relegate it to straight edge. It's in every nation, in every church, and in most football stadiums. So people are always looking for a reason to fight.
I'm curious about your perspective on the gentrification of Arlington and growth of more generally the growth of the defense industry in this area.
Can you speak into the mic? I heard half of it.
I'm curious if you have a perspective on the gentrification of Arlington and more generally the growth of the defense industry in this town.
Yeah. He's about the gentrification of Arlington?
Yeah. Where Dischord.
Well, Dischord House is in Arlington. I lived out there for 21 years. And when we moved out there, it was like the land of used car lots. And also, it was, Clarendon at that time was called Little Saigon. It was like all Vietnamese. I think largely people who were had come over on the boat lift in the 70s, and it was pretty amazing. It was now actually Eden Center out farther out in Falls Church, but at the time they were largely in Clarendon. The gentrification of Arlington, I just said that's just weird. It's just weird to see it happen, but it's with the weather. The weather is weird. So the defense stuff, however, that's just screwy. The amount of money that's spent in defense is psychotic, and Arlington is filled with it. And I didn't even really realize it until they put this one building up right near the metro station. And I thought, well, that's an interesting building. And then I walked by and there's like a guy with a machine gun. I was like, well, what the hell's going on in there? And I realized, yeah, I get it. This is it. It just doesn't occur to me. I have to say, when you live, growing up here, my family, we're not involved with the government really. My father was a newspaperman, and I didn't know government people. So the federal city was always sort of the thing you had to kind of get around. It was like the interruption between Wilbur Park and Northeast. You had to kind of drive around this weird federal enclave. And so even in Arlington, it didn't occur to me that I just don't think about it because it's just out of my purview. I'm just living in Washington. But you start to realize, oh, they're all around us, and it's enormously wealthy. But the gentrification, that gentrification is a long arc, and I don't know what to make of it. It's too bad that everything is so damn expensive. Largely, not only in Arlington, but in D.C., because I think it's really put a hurt on artists, which is too bad. It sucks. And I think that and I feel like if art and music could be killed, it would have died, but it can't be killed. And the people who have music and art and other forms of expression inside of them, they're going to figure this out. They're going to navigate. They're going to figure out how do you exist in this town and this sort of weird economy and still put out that which must be put out. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of people getting settled.
Time for two more questions. One there.
Okay. Hey, Ian, thanks to you and Roger for coming tonight. It's really great. I want to ask you about the dawn of hardcore. When you formed the Teen Idols, how was it that you came to the decision to sing as fast and as loud as you did? I don't recall the Cramps singing like that. How did you decide that?
Probably the Bad Brains. The Dickies and the Bad Brains. The band from the Dickies from LA that were very fast. And the Bad Brains are extremely fast. Another aspect of playing very fast is that it gives you extremely good cover for the fact that you can't play. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter because we were in an environment where people were just happy to be in a room together. And if you made music that was fast, energetic, then we would have a show together. And it just seemed to really make sense. And I remember early practices, and we have to play it faster. I'm really trying to figure out how to play something faster. And I actually have a great story about it. The Bad Brains had tried to go to England, and they had lost their equipment. They got rejected, of course. Because people at Heathrow were like, I'm sorry, you are who? Like, what's Bad Brains? We're black punk rockers from Washington, D.C. We have no money. We have no actual invitation or visas. They're like, all right, have a nice visit to the airport, you'll be going home tomorrow. They did, they just the next day. And in the process, they lost all their gear. So all their gear disappeared. So I got this call saying, hey, we need to play a show, make some money to buy new gear. Do you want to play with us, the Teen Idols? And we said, sure. And they said, can we use your gear? We have no gear. We said, sure. And then they said, can we practice at your practice space? Well, we practiced at Nathan's mom's house. we practiced after high school. We got out of Wilson, and we would take the bus down to his house. And we said, well, guess so, but just had to meet us at school and take the bus. So they drove over, they came to Wilson, they took the bus over, I guess, to Wilson, and we all met them there. We got in the bus, we went down to the Palisades, and then we got down to the basement, and they sat on this couch, and we sat and we said, okay, we're going to play some of our songs. And I was playing bass in the band, and I remember just thinking, like, God, this bass sucks, you know? Damn, it's terrible, it sounds terrible. And they're just sort of like watching us, and I'm like, God, it's terrible bass, terrible. But then we finished, and then they practiced, and I was like, okay, it's not the bass, or the The thing about the Fat Brains is they played incredibly fast, but they worked so hard, like on their music, and they were very tight, and their songs they're incredible pieces of work, you know. And if you study them, like they're just great songs. So I think the speed and the energy was sort of part and parcel of the excitement of the moment, but then like the discipline really came. You would hear in Minor Threat, things got a lot more, the sound became much more tighter, because we were so inspired by the Bad Brains, because they weren't kidding around, and neither were we. We have one last one. This guy's been hold on. This guy's been waiting forever. Can we do the last one?
Okay, we'll do two more. We have to take a question from our Twitter audience.
No, we don't have to take a question. I'm sorry, Twitter person.
I'm just curious. I've never heard the story of the origin of the band name Fugazi.
The name of the origin of the band name Fugazi. I was reading a book by Michael Hare called Nam, and it's a series of recollections of Vietnam veterans. It's a great, incredible book, and actually a lot of the story, the number of the stories in there were kind of woven into Apocalypse Now. I think the Apocalypse Now. But in the book, it's filled, of course, with a lot of jargon and slang. And at some point, the word Fugazi, everything was Fugazi. And I thought, what is that? And I went back and the glossary in the back of the book, and it just said fucked up situation. I thought, that is a great term. I figured it must be some kind of acronym, like FUBAR, fucked up beyond all recognition, snafu, situation normal, all fucked up. But I had no idea I couldn't figure out what the acronym was. But at that time, we've been looking for a name, you know, primarily just to get away from the idea of like Ian's new band or whatever. We wanted a name, and we've been thinking a lot about the idea of having a name that was not too leading. So if you had a band called, you know, Pistol or Hammer, you know, or conversely, you know, Lilac, you know, those they're really they create sort of they set a certain pace that you then kind of maybe are pushed into. But Fugazi just seemed like such a weird word, especially then. And I remember people after they would say, well, "Is that like a Japanese motorcycle?" Someone said, like, "Oh, wait a minute, is that like an Italian dessert?" You know, we always say, "Yes, absolutely it is, yes." But finally, in 1997, we were playing a show in Singapore at a club called Fire, and these two kids, a young woman named Vanita and her brother, whose name I don't recall at the moment, who were living in Singapore, they came up and her brother said, "So what does Fugazi mean?" And Vanita said, "Fucked up, got ambushed, zipped in." I had never heard it before that moment. And I was speechless. I go, "Where did you hear this?" She said, "I've been researching, I found it." And I was like, well, that's incredible. And that was the first way I ever heard it. The other part was a positive situation, but that's the story of Fugazi. Are we all done? Are we all done? Oh, that's the last question.
So, my question is, relates to how the promise of the internet and the ubiquity of cellular technology seems to suggest that it would really enable do-it-yourselfer movements and moments to happen among subcultures of people. But at the same time, in your stories about the DC scene, about go-go, and about the 30 or 40 kids that you knew, it seems to me that you had to show up and you had to be there. And so I'm interested in your comment on that. Do you think that something like the 80s DC punk scene could happen today amongst a bunch of predominantly white middle-class kids that are all kind of, trying to create something? It's not actually that particular demographic has to make it happen. I'm just sort of referring to some of the stories that you're talking about.
I think it is happening. I don't have any question about it. I was saying this class yesterday, I said the same thing. That imagine this is 1982 or 81, and I'm sitting with Roger, and he just posted a show about the wild subculture of the late 40s and early 50s. Right? And I was, I'm Tommy Dorsey or something. I can't imagine we would be aware of minor threat. Anybody in this room necessarily be aware of minor threat. So I think that it's that kind of stuff. They call it underground for a reason. So I think that it's definitely happening. I think that the technology, the problem with technology, in my mind at the moment, is that people are very intoxicated. They're stoned on technology still. When people can recognize technology as a tool, then I think it'll be very effective. It'll be useful. But I think right now people are still like, oh my God, why do you have a question for our Twitter account? And they were saying like, oh, they're tweeting. How many tweets have we done? Like 5? How many did you do?
How many tweets?
Yeah.
Oh man, I have to count. Definitely more than 5.
Oh, okay.
Dozens.
Right. So what the hell is going on here? We can do this real time. Like it's real time. Well, of course it's real time. It's always real. Real. And I'm sorry that I understand the access, and I like and I enjoy being able to look at things. And I think the internet is incredible for research, but I think that we should get away from the idea that it's some magical orb. It's not. It's a tool, and I don't think that they can use the word community as many times as they want. But if you're sitting in front of a fucking light box by yourself, you're not really in community at that moment. You might be making plans. To meet up with the community. You might be. I hope so. For God's sake. But I think that you're never going to be able to replace the power of people coming into one place together. And that's what music, that's what you got. Like, that's the thing. Like, Roger's show would not exist if it were not for the fact that people were making a music which ended up becoming a gathering point, a currency for a larger group of people. And I think largely kids who feel rather marginalized, especially in this city, so that we or they or collectively we could belong to. And I don't really think that, I don't think a computer or the internet is going to be able to facilitate that. However, there are certainly aspects of it that are amazing in terms of being able to make plans or whatever. I like all that. It's a good tool. And let's just try to get to that point.
But still show up.
What's that?
Show up.
Of course, you have to show up. We're done.
Thank you.